Throughout this presentation, I tried to include a lot of things that we did at NC State, or we're doing at NC State, but also some things that just in general are good practices throughout higher education. So hopefully, regardless of your institution size, you should be able to take some things and take them back home. So a lot of people kind of believe that the international market is so cost prohibitive. So wanted to pull some things together to let people know there are some things you can do that do not cost a lot of money to help assist in that effort. At NC State in 2008 we had about 187 international students enrolled, and now we have in 2017 about 920 students enrolled. So we've had a dramatic increase in international students. And these are a lot of the things that we did along the way. Of course, we did spend a little bit more money in other areas, but also these are some of the things we kind of started with to get the ball rolling. So, all right, so one of the big things we did is that we did go SAT, ACT optional for international students. So IIE actually, they put out the Open Doors report, and about 31% of the students that are enrolled from China in the U.S., and that's over 300,000 students. The SAT is not offered on mainland China, so you'll find a lot of students that will fly to another country in order to take the SAT in order to get into our university. So we were able to go SAT optional at our institution, and that does increase your applicant pool, especially with 300,000 students from China. So that was a really big step that we took. Another thing is, of course, distance from exams, but also the number of test administrations. I think there's 4 test administrations as opposed to 8 here in the U.S. So it's challenging even for a student, let's say not in China. When I travel to India, a lot of students will talk about the fact that they got up at like 2 a.m. to drive to a testing site or ride to a testing site with their parents in order to take the exam. So that can be very challenging for a student. So you have some students that are opting out, and so many schools have now gone SAT optional. A lot of students are opting out of taking the SAT or ACT exam. The other thing is, because of just 4 administrations, they're not able to take advantage of the super score. So where our domestic students are able to do that, our international students are able to take advantage of the super score. So going SAT optional has been pretty helpful. And that's like you have the Gaokao in China. That's like asking a U.S. student to take the Gaokao to get into college. The schools aren't prepping for that type of thing and all of that. So that's something that we really value in terms of bringing in more international students going SAT optional. The other thing is timing of document requests. So we have, initially, we were asking for all the, we were waiting after we made an admissions decision to ask for the financial documents and things like that. We changed that process, and now we ask for all financial documents up front. Now, what that does, for one, well, at NC State, we don't really have scholarship for international students, being a state institution, that sometimes that can be a little bit challenging. But we were able to focus on the students that had the ability to pay and were really interested in NC State. So we requested all that information up front. Before, we were making an admissions decision and say, oh, we like these kids or these students, and now let's request financial documents. So we probably were making decisions on a lot of students that we technically didn't have them making a decision on, because they just did not have the ability to afford, at the time, probably $35,000 a year at NC State. So we were able to focus on that group, and as soon as we make a decision now, we can immediately go into that next level of paperwork, so we don't have that delay of getting documents. Also, students now can upload their records. So they can upload their bank statements and passport copy to our web portal rather than having to mail those things to us. So it does lower the cost some, but also makes it a lot quicker for students to do that. We also added additional staff. So in terms of new staff, I know that can be a high cost project, But in terms of new staff, we added our DSO, moved into our office. So, and that's been amazing because now she actually assists us with linking documents and everything in the admissions process. So now she's in our office, and she still helps with study abroad and some of the other offices on campus, but she's in our office and assists with that process. So now instead of having to send something across campus in order to get the I-20 to ship it out, she's right there in the office. So I can make a decision right now, and by later, maybe later today, you know, some of those other documents can go ahead and be processed. We also expanded our international team. That's how I got involved, actually. A lot of offices kind of have that one person that's there, and that's the person who's the guru for international. So for our office, we added, so I handle India. We have someone else that handles kind of Central and South America. Our director of international admissions, she handles the Middle East and Korea. And then we partnered with other offices on campus within enrollment management to handle China. So we've had 2 of our staff members, actually Angela's one of them, to actually go to China for us as well. So that's another thing, is thinking about if you don't have the staff, is figuring out who else on campus will be able to do some things for you as well. Let's see. Oh, the other thing with additional staff is some offices, a student comes in and has questions as an international student. They have to wait for the international person to talk to them. And sometimes they're abroad, you know. But in our office, I think initially, I'd say in the first couple of years I was there, we really did a good job of cross-training. And, you know, we would get just a few questions that, you know, any of our admissions counselors can't answer. Now, somebody comes in international, no one comes to my office and asks questions anymore, but a lot of our staff members are very well versed. So it's very few times that a student comes in and our staff members can't answer the question. So it does take time, but cross-training is very helpful, and it lets the student know that, you know, you have people that understand like where I'm coming from and what I need for my application process. This is actually on the right side of the screen here. This is the second iteration since I was at NC State of our website. But now international students can go to our website and click on Apply International, and it breaks down every single step for a student to apply to NC State. So that's amazing. And most of these things on this particular side typically don't cost any money. It just depends on your setup at your university. For us, for the most part, did not cost any money. And then we also moved to Common Application. If you're not on Common App, if you have an option to move into Common App, it does increase kind of your visibility, especially international, domestically as well. But international, I would talk to students in India, and we would be having a very good conversation about my institution and all of that, and they're excited and they love it. And then they ask, oh, are you on Common App? And at the time, I would say no, and you could just see in their faces, like, they're interested, but they're not gonna apply. So, Common App really gave us a boost in our international, footprint. All right, so low-hanging fruit, you already have international students. One of the programs we did with some of our students, so we did domestically and international, is you already have international students on campus. Just a little bit of training, you can send those students out in order to be kind of ambassadors for your university. If you're not super comfortable, just give them a packet and say, hey, can you go back to your high school and you just quickly go by the high school, drop off this packet, very cheap gift in order to give your high school counselor. And high school counselors appreciate that. And that also now provides a connection. Instead of, oh, that was the student that went to such and such university, now this is the student who came by with a gift from the university with a business card of maybe the director of international admissions. So you have those students there. Alumni, Education USA, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Education USA, they have alumni fairs across many countries, and it's designed to have someone who's an alum of your institution to come and represent your institution. So making those connections with alumni to participate in some of these international fairs can be really good. Also, faculty. You already have faculty that are traveling abroad, whether it's for research, different partnerships. You can give them opportunity, and you have to have someone who's willing, of course, to talk about the admissions process at local high schools. Now, sometimes that can be a little bit challenging because people may not feel comfortable. They, can be worried about the questions they can get. But subject-specific presentations can be really good. So if you have somebody that's in the sciences, if you say, hey, I'd like to talk about careers in the sciences across the world, high school counselors will easily allow you to go into a high school in order to do that. And it has the same effect. You're not talking about your institution, but you have somebody from your institution talking about a particular topic. That is really, really good for international students. When I travel abroad, I try to have, and typically it's still admissions related. Like the last time I was in India, I did a presentation on the holistic review process. And so I was able to talk to all these students that had no interest initially in NC State about the holistic review process. And at the end, what do they have? More questions about NC State. So that's something that maybe a professor or anyone like that can do for you as well. All right, so some things you may want to think about, webinars. We, over time, have been doing webinars, so I've done a couple on Skype with people in different countries, but also there's opportunity with Facebook Live now. I think sometimes people just kind of think it's a place to have fun and all of that, but we did a Facebook Live last week, actually last Wednesday, and so far we've had 9,000 views. And a lot of the students were domestic students, but that's something that you can use internationally. I've actually done a Facebook Live with Education USA in Chennai, in India, and I was able to reach a very large audience across that southern region of India. And I've tried to do one with Delhi, but that was around the time the government shut down. In my brain, I didn't connect government shutdown with where I was presenting, so they weren't able to do it on Facebook Live, but I was able to talk to students in the room. So Facebook Live is, again, completely free platform that you can use. And then you can also add funds if you'd like to in order to kind of push it out there a little bit. Social media. Across most international students, social media is a very easy way to connect with them. They're using social media just like our students. In China, that can be a bit of a challenge. We recently have used WeChat in the last year or two to connect with students, and our person, Brantley, who traveled to China for us, he said pretty much everybody from high school student, high school counselor, parent are using WeChat for so many different things. So he was able to connect with students using WeChat. Now WeChat is easier to set up a personal account than an actual official account, because apparently you have to go through the government and all of that. So WeChat is a good way to connect with Chinese students. Let's see. Also, marketing plan. If you already have a marketing plan, I think some offices, they put together kind of marketing, a lot of different things, and they think, and the second thing you think about is the international population. So I challenge you to think about, as you're putting together, whether it's brochures, marketing plans, all of that, think about the international student as well, and make sure they're included in that process. And think about always, if you're sending something out, think about sending that to the international student. If it's hard copy mail, that's something different, but sending it to the international student as opposed to always kind of looking at them as a different population. So we integrated our students into our general marketing plan, which is, for the most part, email to students. So that's an easy way to continue to ping those students. Let's see. Oh yeah, we also have a virtual tour. So students can go to our website and get a virtual tour of our campus. Think about this, does cost a little bit of money, but we do have a virtual tour on our website. Student workers, if you already have student workers, actually being intentional about having international students, they can help you so much. Whether it's when you're putting together a brochure, trying to help translate something, all of that can be very helpful if you have international students in-house. So in our office, we currently have a student from India, a student from China, a student from Korea, and let's see, a student from Brazil. So we have students in-house that can help us with that process. And even when we're actually traveling, spend a little bit more money, but traveling, we get tips of where to go and all those things, but they're in-house. So you can use those students, and that can be very powerful because you all know if students can see themselves in a current student, that can be very helpful for a student. And also student videos, same thing. Making student videos that now, whether you can email out, if you do travel internationally, you can use that to play while you're at these international high schools. All right, so licensing names. How many people license names in the room through College Board? All right, so typically about, whether it's ACT, College Board, or TOEFL, somewhere around 50 cents a name. In general, but you can go in and purchase specific names of students, or license names, what typically they call it. And now you can figure out, okay, you can go as granular as the different sub-scores on the exams and all of that. So you can go in and purchase names of students that are interested. Obviously, they opted in to receive contact from universities. And you can go in and look at these students and start to communicate with them. So that's a way to get into maybe some markets that you hadn't been in without jumping out there. And again, about 50 cents per name. And in general, typically, try not to look at that as kind of a financial decision, but typically schools profit from name purchases just because of their application fee and all of that. So if you think, oh, well, we don't have a budget right now, typically you can make money off it. So it's not a negative effect by actually spending that money on different names for your institution. And AP is up here because in China, as I mentioned, SAT is a challenge for students, but they are taking the AP exam. So even for your domestic students, if you're looking for a particular program, you can go in and say, okay, I want more students in our chemistry program. Let me find who's taking AP chemistry in their junior year. So obviously very interested in chemistry. So you can do that through College Board, and of course you have ACT and TOEFL up here as well. And all right, so what are some of the things here in the U.S. you can do? There are a lot of international boarding schools, so that's something to think about. There's schools right in your backyard that have a lot of international students that are already here, so you don't have to have the general conversation of what America is like, because they're already here. So the international boarding schools are always a great option. You have IACAC. IACAC is a great place because they have international counselors that come here every year, typically in July. So they'll be here every year for a conference, and that's a great opportunity, not an expensive conference, to send your staff members to make those connections. Education USA Forum, that happens every year in DC. Education USA Forum is very interesting because it can be somewhat overwhelming, not necessarily the number of people there, but just the people all from different countries trying to make those connections. So you want to have a plan if you decide to attend Education USA Forum. I typically go every year. The last year we actually hosted a reception. So we invited these counselors and leadership just to come and have some food and talk and all of that. And I mean, it's been great, just the conversations we've had back and forth. And these are the counselors that are in the students' face in these different countries. So now, if a student doesn't know, but they're interested in certain programs that I have, I have a stronger feeling that they may suggest NC State. So that's something that you can think about as well. And partner high schools. So we've partnered with high schools abroad, and we always find very good high schools that are interested in sending more students to the U.S. And with these high schools, we have a MOU with them, and basically they vet the high school student to potentially, apply to NC State. So that's something that we've done, and we do travel there, not necessarily every year, but every once in a while we'll go out and do a site visit and everything, and have a chance to talk with them. So that's really good. And also scholarship programs. So a lot of the scholarship programs have historically come out of the Middle East, at least recently. So that's something as well. So when I travel to Education USA Forum, typically I will spend a day either before the forum or after the forum and just visiting the embassies and talking to their cultural attaches. And I will spend a whole day with our Director of Admissions, John Powell, and we really were able to connect with these scholarship programs in order to bring students on our campus. And it's across, it's not just STEM programs, it's also across some of the other majors as well. All right, so with a lot of the things that we've been doing, this has been kind of some of the results. So in terms of the number of applications, obviously we've had a consistent increase here. The last kind of dip, some students were a little bit afraid the last year. So we did see a decrease in applications there. But as you see, it's been a pretty consistent increase, and so far this year we expect that number to go up. Yes.
When you all went to the Common App?
Common App, was it 2015? Yeah, so 2015, so this jump right here.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
And did you see a significant correlation in your admits or deposits?
Yes.
What we saw was that there was the initial spike, but then really quickly the admits and deposits kind of flattened off.
Yes, so there typically, at least from conversations I've had, you will see a drop in your yield that first year, and then you kind of recorrect to having that new application when you move to Common App. So yeah, we did see that drop in the yield initially. So it is a correction that you kind of have to hedge against, knowing that. So if anybody's moving to Common App, you want to hedge against that. But yeah, so we did see that. But now also the diversity of the student applicant pool really changed when we moved to Common App. Well, I mean, we were getting applications from places that we had never traveled, we had never purchased names, we had never done any of those things. But that Common App kind of changed that, so that was a big, and I actually have done a different presentation on the Common Application, kind of what it did to our applicant pool. So now in our enrollment spike, I know everybody's going to ask about this number here. I haven't figured out what that what that is yet. In my mind, I'm thinking it's a glitch in the matrix. So I'm not exactly sure what that is there, but overall it's been a consistent increase in our international enrollments. And initially we had plenty of students from China. That was our population on campus. So we've purposely tried to figure out how to diversify that population, because Chinese students aren't coming to the US to study with Chinese students. They're coming to study with US students or students from all around the world. So we wanted to make sure that we brought in students from a lot of different countries across the world. But you see that increase. Also, this is just percentage growth. Now, we did start off with smaller numbers, but over time, we've really increased our populations from really all across the U.S. So we've been very purposeful. It is very easy to just depend on China just because of the number of students. Now, recently, those numbers have started to drop for China. For a lot of the other countries, they've continued to go up. But China has started to drop off. India is the fastest growing country currently in terms of sending in international students to the U.S. So that may be something that you want to think about if you are thinking about kind of marketing to students. But China is still, there's just so many, even a drop, you know, it's worth, if you haven't jumped out there, to go ahead and see if you can recruit some students from China. All right, so what questions do you have?
You guys, if you don't do the your SAT optional, what do you use for picking an exam into math and chemistry? Do you have a homegrown placement exam, or how do you?
Now for the admissions process, we're completely optional, so there's not something that we're putting in place of that. So we are evaluating the transcripts in-house. So at the high school level, we evaluate the international transcripts in-house. So students do not have to do an evaluation at all for high school. If they attend a university abroad, yes, they have to complete an evaluation with one of the companies. So we're evaluating those things in-house. I would say for a student who chooses to not send us an SAT, it's not that we're, you know, looking at it with more scrutiny at all. I would say some students, I see applications sometimes, and if they submit, so we're optional, but if they submit the test score, then we have to look at it, and we have to consider.
I'm asking more specifically for students going into like engineering and STEM fields, for instance, into math, chemistry, those things. Do you guys have your own test that they take before or after arriving to your university?
Yeah, so we do have placement exams that all students would do as well. But in general, in our admissions process, if you're applying directly to a program like engineering, we're gonna look at your math and your science scores in high school, or grades in high school. And so we are very focused on the specific courses, especially when you're interested in something like engineering. Because we want to make sure that students are successful. All of us want to do that. So we do pay more close attention just for all of our students, what they're doing in math and science. So a student can have a 1500 SAT, but okay, you have consistent C's across the board in math. Maybe engineering is not the best fit for you. So that's something that we think about in the review process.
Are you going to China or India? Are you partnering with a company or a tour?
Yeah, so I've used Linden Tours and also KIC, and they're more focused in India. Linden does China, India, South America, so they're a little bit more global with their outreach, but I've used those tours. I've also traveled by myself. If you do have somewhat of a budget, I would say initially do a tour, but after you've done one or two tours, you really can typically you can figure out what you should be doing and start to make those connections. I actually, 2 weeks ago, I was in India and I landed, and first day I was there, I was doing a reception, next day a reception, took a day off, then another reception. I was just doing receptions all across the country. And it's pretty, and it's lower cost than doing something like that here in the US. So you can really, and that trip was less than $10,000 easily, and we were able to meet with a lot of students there. Any other questions? Is anyone currently, do you have budgets to travel? Are you traveling internationally? And what are some of the places that you're traveling internationally?
So I'm not in our office. So Central South America.
Okay.
In Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain. We actually are opening a sister campus in Bahrain. So, and then China pretty heavily as well.
Okay. The other thing is, if you are traveling internationally, partnering with other institutions can be really beneficial. It can be challenging to jump out there and you don't know if the students really know your name and all of that, but partnering with other institutions in order to do, whether it's a small fair or high school visits, that's something that high schools really like. And I talked about it with the alumni and the faculty, but subject-specific presentations, high school counselors really like, because you have a lot of students that still want to study in the U.S. Going in and saying, hey, I'm just going to talk about the holistic review process or how colleges look at the SAT and all these other things. it's very easy to get into a high school and get in front of 100, 200 students and be able to do a presentation on behalf of your institution.
To that point, I know one thing that we've done is actually partner with a school that was very opposite of us. So we're a large public institution, and we partner with like small private, and so especially on the West Coast. So they present or at some.com or something like that, or a recession. The students are going to be looking for one type of school, or just trying around. We're not really competing against them.
Right.
We're just giving them more options.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different ways that that people look at those types of partnerships. I prefer partnering with schools that are not like us, but also I've actually been invited to a couple different groups where it's all large public research institutions, that type of thing. So now of course I'm not going to pick one that's right in my backyard. Typically that particular invitation came from like kind of the Midwest, and I was kind of the only East Coast school, so it was very. Hopefully I will be doing that next year. So partnering with other schools can help to bring down your cost a lot. What are some of the things that you all may be doing in terms of low cost strategy? Anything that I didn't cover? Anybody working with agents? Agents?
We do. I can tell you any details.
Okay, yeah. We don't work with agents. I don't really know a whole lot about that area. We don't necessarily work with agents, but I think personally, I think it's worth the investment to send staff members to kind of learn the area or the country first before you make that hard decision of whether you're going to use agents or not. So, learn something about the country and the market first before you jump into the agent territory. I think having clear goals is very important, whether that's a specific country or a specific region. So that way you can spend your time to figure out all the different things that within that Education USA office that they can assist you in your process. So having clear goals, because again, Education USA can be very overwhelming. And some people have been going to that event for years. So you want to have clear goals to be able to find those people that you're looking for in order to make those strong connections and continue to build on that while you're there for those 2 days. I will also try to build in an embassy visit. You really have to schedule those well in advance, but try to build in something like that to make connections with a local embassy in DC. All right, so one of the reasons that, so we don't offer pretty much anything in terms of scholarship. That was one of the reasons that we changed our process to ask for financial documents up front, because we don't offer scholarships for international students. It's extremely limited. So if I talk to a parent, I let them know you should expect to pay full price. They may get something, but I let them know that they should do that. So there's no scholarships for NC State. So that is something that you also want to think about as you're going to different countries. There may be 1 million students interested in your school. If you have no scholarships, then you're probably in the wrong part of the country. So that's something to think about if you do decide to travel, or even when you're purchasing names. You can go in and actually select different levels of income that people expect to pay for their education as well. So you want to be very specific, especially if you don't offer scholarships at your institution.
You guys have any articulation agreements with schools abroad?
Not necessarily articulation agreement with any schools abroad currently. I mean, that's something that I would like to do, but nothing right now on the books. Besides the high schools that we work with, no specific articulation agreements. And there are, like Broward College, they actually have campuses across Asia. So that's an opportunity, South America as well. So that's an opportunity to get international students that obviously they now have US credits and they can easily transfer into your institution. So that's another opportunity as well. And there may be other universities, but Broward I've worked with before.
You mentioned some of the scholarships that you learned about with the embassy attaches. What were some of those scholarships that other countries offer?
Yeah, so Kuwait offers a scholarship, Saudi Arabia Cultural Mission as well, KAUST, and I cannot remember all the names of the acronyms off the top of my head, but KAUST is KAUST. SACRAO, Oman offers a really good scholarship. They do have limits in terms of what they will pay for the tuition and fees, so they do have limits there. Let's see, Oman, and I'm missing a few, but there are a couple, and I can also send you our list of different people we work with. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for coming to my presentation. If you have questions, this is my email address here. And I also can, if you leave me your business card, I can also send you the presentation as well. So thank you.